Hey YouTube, I am Tiberius and you're about to watch an edited recording of a Twitch stream. You can check out my Twitch using the link in the video description. If you enjoy the content, please consider giving it a like and subscribing to my channel. Thank you and enjoy the video. So Museum, I was honestly kind of surprised only 81 people solved it. I didn't find it too difficult. I didn't think it was that hard. It just required a little bit of thought, I guess. Okay, so we've started the challenge. Right, so check out our Museum of Artifacts. Apparently soon they will allow public submissions, just like in Animal Crossing. Retrieve the flag out of /flag.txt in the root of the file system. Okay. At least it works, kind of. So if I go view... There we go, it's working. So basically, this was all we got. We view the page source, we can see really nothing much. There's a few libraries loaded, and then there's this submit area, which is closed off. Nothing in the source code related to that. The only other thing you can do is you can view, so let's view cat.jpg actually. And if you'll notice, let me actually go into burp. Let's just get rid of the JS actually. Here we go. Oh god. Okay, it's still trying to use HTTPS for some bizarre reason. Okay. So if we go browse artifact cat.jpg, it returns cat.jpg here, here. It puts an image source there. It also discloses that it's using Python. And so there's some funky stuff with Python and files and like building like file paths. So one of the first things I tried, obviously, we're trying to get to Etsy flag, right? Or just /flag. So clearly, like, just trying to get to like Etsy password. Artifact not found. There was once a bug I found which was very strange. So let me actually just do new file. So the bug was if you tried to do Etsy password, it wouldn't work, right? So that failed. But for some reason, if you did a / Etsy password, that worked. The reason I think it worked was when it was reading in the value, it was actually stripping off the first slash. And so when you strip off the first slash, you still get the Etsy password. So this is one of the first things I tried. And it worked. So really, when you're looking for like any kind of file inclusion, you should just be trying lots of different stuff. Okay, I could have tried doing like the file that, which doesn't work. But anyway, I found that two slashes worked. The other thing sorry, before I tried that,
Thank you for following.
I'm sorry if I'm all over the place in this stream. Again, I'm not feeling very well. The other thing I tried was I did a / and that also worked, right? So a / worked, and then I saw that it was this public directory. So what I tried was public cat.jpg, which didn't work. So then what I did was I tried .. public cat, and this said artifact not found. That's interesting. Because realistically, there should be no difference between that and a .. public / if indeed the cat file is located in the public directory. So what that told me is there's some kind of support for file or path interpretation, because you could do a / and still get stuff. But for some reason you couldn't do a // which means it's probably being filtered. Anyway. So, etc password worked, so okay, next we just do etc flag.txt, right? Oh dear. Sensitive artifacts are not made visible to the public. So there's various things you could try. You could try doing extra stuff. We could do like a /. Nothing was working. There's something filtering flag. So what do we need? What do we need to? What would be really helpful in this instance? Source code. Rykard's got it. Source code. How do we get the source code? Well, it's a Python app and it's running on this workzerg or whatever. However you pronounce this. This tells me it's highly likely to be Flash. Oh, sorry, not Flash. Flask. So, we could go guessing for file paths, but here's the thing to remember about a Flask app, right? Flask app in Python. So the main app file is usually app.py. Okay? But it could be anywhere. I hate the autocomplete on this thing. Anyway, could be anywhere, but the web server, right, is running out of the app.py directory. Okay, which means if this is in, so if the app.py is located at random / blah 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 / app.py, right? The web server current directory is this. Okay, so the current working directory is that. Is there a way in which we can figure out what the current directory is? Linux has this amazing directory called proc. Alright, there you go, Bonzo's got it. So the proc directory is basically where all the process information is. If I go to /proc, right? These are kind of all the processes, these directories here. Everything on Linux is a file, by the way. Even processes are files now. Okay, so all of these basically are the PIDs of each process. And inside all these directories, there are various files, or to be honest, they're like pseudo files that relate to stuff. Well, how does that help? Like, we can't just guess the PID, right? Well, the nice thing is that there is this self file, which isn't even a file, it's some kind of weird link. And this self file always points to the current process that is accessing the list of the files, right? So whenever something accesses self, it points to its own PID. And so all we really need to do is we need to do proc self, and then we can do stuff like command line, and we get this. But that's not good enough. What we can do is we can just do cwd artifact not found, because this is actually a reference to the current working directory. So if we now do app.py, look, we've got all the code. Cool, right? So you don't even need to know the directory where this file is. You just need to recognize that app.py is the most common name for a Flask app, and that proc self cwd is always going to basically point to the directory where the app.py file is. And so now we have this source code, which is encoded, but we can fix that in a minute. So let's just do this. I think I can probably actually do this in hackversa, because I just need to decode using HTML entities, I think. Yeah. Okay, so we have the source code of the app, and look, it does use Flask. Yay! All right. So we know that the route thing just displays the artifacts. That's fine. If we go to public file name, it's just going to take the file name, os.pathjoin, cwd public and file name. That's fine. So we can't really do anything with this because of the ../ stuff. The browse method is where things get interesting, right? So it basically takes the artifacts parameter and sets it to the file name variable. It then checks if there's a .. in the file name. This is where we get in this error, right? If there's a .. it automatically returns an error. Okay.
Thank you for following.
This is the interesting bit. So it checks the first character of the file name, and if it is a slash and the second character is an alphabetical character, it returns an error as well. So that's why we couldn't just do this, right? Because the first character is a slash, the second character is a letter, an alphabetical character. But if you put a second one in, suddenly the first character is still a slash, but the second character is non-alphabetical, which means this check passes. Alright, so then it gets, it makes a file path, then it checks to see if it's actually a file, which is fine. Then it says, okay, is flag.txt in the file path? And then it returns, sorry, sensitive artifacts not visible to the public. Actually, one thing I didn't check was, I imagine this is not the case, but can we do like, we probably can't do flag.txt with this. No, okay, good. I was going to say, did I just find a cheese way around it? No, because it does check the case here. Okay. So, assuming that there's no .. in the file name, that the file name doesn't check this thing and doesn't contain the word flag.txt. God. Then it will open the file and read in the data. Then it does this weird thing where if the image type, so basically the file thing ends in a .jpeg, PNG, GIF, or JPEG, it sets this image thing to true. And this is why when we did this, we actually get the data from the file, but when we do our original cat.jpg, we just get a link, right? Well, we get an image embedded. Okay, so that's the difference. If this didn't have a JPEG on the end, then it would display the entire file. All right. I wonder if we can actually do something like this. Okay, it's worth trying. Okay, so that's basically how the file thing works. So now we have to look down, and there's a few secret routes. So we knew about the submit route before, right? That's the thing which is disabled. But then there's these two other routes. There's private submission fetch, and there's private submission. Okay, what does private submission fetch do? Well, it's a GET request. It has a URL parameter, and then it calls submission fetch. On the URL, sets the output to a response variable and then returns the variable. Okay, so submission fetch is a function here, which takes a URL here, an optional file name, which otherwise is none, and then it runs urllib.request.urlretrieve on the URL and the file name equals file name. Okay, so let's have a look at what this does. Okay, so copy a network object denoted by a URL, this thing, to a local file. If the URL points to a local file, the object will not be copied unless the file name is supplied. Return a tuple or tuple where file name is the local file name under which the object can be found, and headers is whatever the info method of the object returned by URL open returned. Okay, so basically this is a way to fetch a URL and save it to a file. Okay? The only problem here is the private submission fetch thing only supplies the URL. So it doesn't supply the file name. Okay, so we go on to this second route, the private submission route. Now, the difference here, this private submission route, the first thing it checks for is if the request remote address is basically localhost. Otherwise, it redirects to the submit. This pretty much can't be bypassed. So you can't use like the X forwarded for headers or anything like that. This is going to check if you are literally coming from an internal IP address.
Thank you for following.
Local to the machine. Alright? There's no way around that. However, let's read it anyway. So this takes the URL and the file name. And then it uses submission fetch, the same function, only this time it does actually pass the file name into this. Okay. Well, I mean, think about it. We can save the flag. We can fetch the flag file, right? And then save it to some other file name using this private submission function. The problem is we can't access this private submission function because we're not localhost. However, we have a private submission fetch, right? So the answer is basically SSRF. We want to build a we want to call private submission via private submission fetch. We know that it's listing localhost port 5000, so what we can do here, we'll do HTTP 127.0.0.1 5000 private submission. Takes a URL and the file name. So URL equals, we'll just leave that for now. File name. Let me just double check something. Okay, we just need actual file name here. So if we just do Tiberius, let's do Tiberius.txt. Okay. So if we send the file name Tiberius.txt to this function, right? We're going to save, it's going to fetch the URL we give it, and it's going to save it into the public directory as Tiberius.txt. We can just use the file URL, right? We know it's at flag.txt. So if we give it the URL file : / and then /flag.txt, that's a valid URL. All right. So what private submission is going to do, it's going to fetch the contents of flag.txt and it's going to save it into Tiberius.txt in the public directory. Okay. So the next step is we need to just encode this URL and then send it to private submission fetch as the URL. All right. So if I get this URL equals, and then if I copy this URL, paste it in there. Okay. We need to. Oh, I think the box is. Yep. I ran out of time. Okay, it's 30079 now. Okay, we get an internal server error, which kind of makes sense because this request returns a response, and this response, if we remember, the URL retrieve function returns a tuple. And unfortunately in Flask doesn't really understand what a tuple means. So I'm pretty sure it's getting that because of the return response thing. Either way, this should have worked. So if we go back here, I just need to change the 3007.
Thank you for following.
Okay, so now if we just do Tiberius.txt without the slash, there's the flag. See, it wasn't too difficult. I think that the core thing was finding that you could read the source code. Once you could read the source code, everything kind of fell into place, because there was one function which was really useful that you couldn't use, and there was one function which was kind of useful which you could, and we just had to combine them. So it wasn't too difficult, just a weird SSRF, and again, that is all. On the screen are my socials. Please follow me on Twitter, join the Discord server, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and of course follow me on Twitch to get alerted when I go live. You can also find all these links in the video description.